The abbot of the monastery assigned the task of going through the mail delivered there to one of the old monks, and the monk in charge had 3 baskets for the mail. The first basket was marked secular, the second basket was marked sacred, and the third basket was marked top sacred. Today, I speak to you about top sacred matters. In fact, when Jesus was being questioned by Sadducees and Pharisees on a variety of subjects, the resurrection being one of them, paying taxes being another one of them, today he's now confronted by the Pharisees. It was just sort of a series of attacks on Jesus to see if they could break him down. And this one has to do with the greatest law. And Jesus quotes 2 of the great books of the law in the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, the second law, and the book of Leviticus. And he gives us the great command that we hear in Leviticus that every devout Jew would pray day after day, right? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then Jesus adds from Deuteronomy, and love your neighbor as yourself. Putting those 2 together so that they should never be divided. Love of God must be evidenced by our love of neighbor in Jesus' understanding. Let me tell you about a young woman named Claire. Claire was born in Soviet Russia, and her mother left her at a train station. Her alcoholic mother, who could not care for this girl, a 5-year-old girl, left her in a train station, abandoned her. She was found by Soviet officials and put into one of their orphanages. In that orphanage, now remember, in Soviet Russia, religion was against the law, so it was officially atheistic. She knew nothing of Christ. But by the age of 13, she had never celebrated Christmas, of course. By the age of 13, there was a group of American Christians who sent packages, relief packages, to the children in this particular orphanage. And the group was called Operation Christmas Child. So she got a little shoebox, and she didn't know why, but it has something to do with something called Christmas. Inside of her shoebox, she had toys, hair clips, and candy. Inside were some words about what Christmas, the first Christmas, was. After that, she thought about it, 13-year-old girl, and started praying to this Christ that she could experience him. And by the age of 15, 2 years later, she was adopted by a Christian family in Florida and taken out of Soviet Russia to the Peterson family. Claire Peterson then grew up with 5 Soviet adopted children in the Peterson home. And when she grew up, she decided she would become a missionary for Christ, and she works as a representative of Operation Christmas Child. And she tells the story of going down. One of her first missions was to Belize, bringing gift boxes to an orphanage in Belize. And the children hugged her, they cried. Many of them had had nothing previous to that. And Claire then told her own story about how she found the love of Jesus Christ as an orphan in Soviet Russia. Love is not to be contained to the self. Love is not about my relationship, Jesus and me, private. Private devotion is required to grow in love, but it's not the end of the story. Love is meant to be shared. In fact, in the Bible, there are really 3 loves spoken of. In Hebrew, New Testament, remember, was written in Hebrew. In Greek. In Greek, there are 3 different words for love. Actually, you could even say 4. Eros, phileo, and like phileo, storge, and then agape. So let's look at eros. Eros you would read about in something like the Song of Solomon in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament, in romantic love, right? Couples experience that as they begin to date one another, a romantic love. The second level of love is called phileo. Now that word you will recognize from the city of Philadelphia, right? Which translates the city of brotherly love, fraternal love. Storge is similar, it's really family love. So friendship and family, that's the second level of love. And as Christians, we are called to that friendship with one another and with all people, according to Christ. Then the highest level of love is called agape. Agape love. Whenever Jesus speaks of love, he uses agape. Why? Because he is agape incarnate. Agape means sacrificial love. There it is. Agape love is both vertical and horizontal. St. John, when he writes in his first letter, chapter 4, verse 8 and again in 16 says this: not only that God created the world out of love, not only that God created every human person out of love, he says God is love, agape. Twice, to get the point across, God is love. God equals sign love. And so if we want a relationship with God, then it must be in love, and it must be sacrificial love, which means now the vertical line of our relationship with God must be carried out into the horizontal line with one another. And Christ was crucified on that cross. A number of the saints have given us great teachings on sacrificial love. For example, the Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen said this: sacrifice without love is pain. Pain with love is sacrifice. Pain without love is misery. Love without pain is heaven, and love with pain is purgatory. And pain without love is hell. That was his meditation on the importance of sacrificial love, which is what leads us to heaven. Many of you heard in the middle of the week, we learned that with new restrictions coming from the Archdiocese, that in-church celebrations of the Eucharist will no longer be available publicly. And then with the clarification, we discovered that we would be able to offer the Mass outside. So a little sacrifice, like the early Christians, they didn't have a church for 300 years. So their Masses were not in churches. They were not typically indoor. They were underground, in catacombs. Cold, damp catacombs. Sacrificial love for the one who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So, yes, it will be cold, predicting snow this week, beginning our wintry weather. So, ladies, those old fur coats you have somewhere deep in the closet, you might want to get those to the dry cleaner. Prepare yourself. We're going to have a real sacrificial Mass outside, in front of the church and all around the church. At the 9, the 10:45, and the 12:15, the 7 a.m. will be recorded so that those who are not able to get to Mass will have a Mass, because our camera is inside, fixed, as you know, above the risen Christ. Outside, you will be able to follow, we hope, some of it without the camera, but at least the audio. We will be getting speakers for the outdoors. So I have a lot of work to do this week, but by next weekend, please God, it'll all be ready. Well, ready or not, we're going to have it. The Mass will go on. Saint Therese of Lisieux said this: "My strength lies in prayer and sacrifice. They are invincible weapons and touch hearts more surely than words can do, as I have learned by experience." St. Francis of Assisi put it this way: "Remember that when you leave this earth, you can take with you nothing that you have received, but only what you have given with a full heart, enriched by honest service, love, sacrifice, and courage." And then I conclude with the words of St. John Paul: "There is no place for selfishness and no place for fear. Do not be afraid then when love makes demands. Do not be afraid when love requires sacrifice."